Roses are red, violets are blue, eggplants are purple, and Elsbeth is too. Chapter 4. Elsbeth found herself immersed in complete blackness and utter confusion. The only thing she knew for certain was that she was lying flat on her back. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed was that her parents were nowhere to be found. Had they been so callous as to walk away, leaving her alone on the living room floor? The second thing she noticed was that the living room was also nowhere to be found. The ceiling had been replaced by a soft light twinkling through a canopy of translucent green leaves, shuddering in a soft breeze. For a moment, she was afraid to move. Her hands at her sides, her fingers probed what she would have expected to be the shag carpeting, but felt a lot more like moss and dirt. Bringing her fingers close to her face, she noticed the rich, dark soil beneath her nails. Slowly, she sat up to find herself in the middle of a thick forest. She wanted to call out, but she was fearful of who or what her cries might summon. Elsbeth had grown up in the city, and other than a handful of trips to visit mean old Grandma Wanda in the country, she had never been outside of it. A forest was something she had seen only in movies, and she'd never had the desire to visit one in person. It was her understanding that the so-called great outdoors generally lack things like indoor plumbing, television, and internet access. This might be acceptable to wild animals and bugs, but for humans it seemed a barbaric place at best. Still, she had to admit it smelled rather nice. It was the unfamiliar sounds that gave her discomfort. The squawking and chirping of what she assumed and hoped were birds and the rustling of trees in the wind. "What is this?" Elsbeth whispered. "Where am I?" "I think you mean," came a strong voice from very nearby, "where are we?" With the quickness of Mr. Comfy dodging a commemorative plate, Elsbeth rolled to her hands and knees and scanned the area with nervous eyes. "Who said that?" she demanded in a shaking voice. "Who's there?" "Why, it's me, of course," the voice answered. When Elsbeth looked down, she saw Dolly Do-Eyes with eyes no longer absent and a plastic body no longer stiff and motionless. The doll was standing, and with real simple and supple palms, brushing dirt and pine needles from her fashionable but badly frayed blue cocktail dress. "Look at this mess. I hope the next time you decide to keel over, you'll have the courtesy to put me down first." You can talk?" gasped Elsbeth. "Yes, I can," agreed Dolly Do-Eyes, almost as surprised as Elsbeth at her newfound vocal abilities. "Well, what do you know?" "But I don't understand. Why are you talking like that? In that voice?" "What's wrong with my voice?" asked the doll, while smacking her dirty palms together. "Well," said Elsbeth, "for one thing, you sound so much older than you are." "And how old do you think I am?" asked the doll. "I got you for my 3rd birthday," Elsbeth replied, "and I'm almost 12, which means you couldn't be more than 9 in toy years." "You assume," said the doll, "that I was brand new at the time. Fact is that I'm 27. Elsbeth was thankful to be sitting on the ground, otherwise these words might have knocked her right off her feet. Are you saying my parents bought you used?" "Garage sale," said the doll. 50 cents, if you can believe that. Imagine what that did for my self-esteem. And then on top of that, you go and cut off all my hair. Thanks a lot." "You know, I think I liked you better when you couldn't talk, Dolly Do-Eyes," said Elsbeth. "Oh, I'm sure you did," said the doll. "That way you could go on, day after day, convinced that I actually like you. And by the way, please do not refer to me by the awful name Dolly Do-Eyes. Good grief." "I was only 3 when I named you," Elsbeth reminded the doll. "The other girl was 3 when she got me and still had the good taste to call me Fashion Farah, which is the name on the box and is what I prefer to be called." Elsbeth suddenly realized something. "Wait a minute," she said. "I'm sure it's probably a simple misunderstanding, but did you just imply that you don't like me?" "Let's face it, you're not a very likable person, are you?" the doll answered. "Always putting words in my mouth, not to mention all the yelling and throwing whenever you don't get your way. It's embarrassing, really." Elsbeth was unaware that her mouth now hung wide open and her bottom lip had started to quiver. The very idea that her beloved doll could have such negative feelings toward her was too much for Elsbeth to bear, and she began to do something she had not done in a very long time. She began to cry. It started out as a whimper, then quickly morphed into that type of full-on crying you see in the movies when someone is trying very hard to win an Academy Award. The blubbering went on for a very uncomfortable few minutes and might have continued much longer had Elsbeth not made a very determined effort to force those sobs and her sorrow back from where they had come. "No," she said, mopping up the tears with her shirt sleeve. She stood and wiped her nose with that same sleeve and then stamped her foot. "This is nothing to cry about. You're just a stupid old doll." "Excuse me," said Farah. "I am not stupid." "You are if you think you're going to find your way back home without my help, so I suggest you start being nicer to me." "Home?" said the doll. "Why would I want to go back there? All I do is sit in your silly purple room all day. I never get to leave the house because you're too embarrassed to be seen with me." "That's not true," Elsbeth protested. "It's lavender, not purple." "Aha! So you are ashamed of me." The doll jabbed its tiny finger in Elsbeth's direction. "Just admit it already." "Well," said Elsbeth, stalling while trying to think of how to put it diplomatically, "just look at your hair. I mean, seriously." "There you go," said the doll, her hands on her hips and her painted-on eyebrows turned downward in a fierce scowl. "If I had any doubt you were a horrible person before, I certainly don't now." "You listen to me, you little plastic runt," said Elsbeth, while fighting off the urge to punt the doll into the surrounding greenery. "I will not stand here and be lectured by some two-bit garage sale item." "First of all, 50 cents is 4 bits, said the doll. "And I may be a garage sale item, but I have something you'll never have. Self-respect. I'll bet your parents are sorry they ever—" The doll cut off in mid-sentence. "What?" Elsbeth demanded. "Sorry they ever did what?" "Nothing," the doll insisted. "I started to say something, but it's none of my business. It's between you and them, and I'll leave it at that. Have a nice life." The doll turned on her plastic heel and huffed off into the shadows of the trees. "Wait," Elsbeth called out. "Don't leave me here alone." The girl's plea went unanswered. Elsbeth thought of what might make Dolly Do-Eyes change her mind. "I could get you a wig," she shouted through cupped hands. Elsbeth stood and watched as her once favorite toy disappeared behind a large fern. She was now all alone, officially friendless and miserable in a strange forest far from home. Tisket a doll that's made of plastic. I held it tightly in my arms, and on the way I dropped it. I dropped it, and on the way I dropped it. It wandered off into the woods, and now I fear I've lost it.